In 2014, an unprecedented cyber attack shook Hollywood. Sony Pictures, one of the largest entertainment companies, fell victim to hackers who unleashed chaos, exposed sensitive secrets, and almost derailed the release of a blockbuster film. But when investigators traced the attack back to an unexpected source, the world was stunned. How did a movie studio find itself at the center of an international controversy? Stick around, because this story is as dramatic as the movies Sony produces. The hack unfolds. It started like any other day at Sony Pictures on November 24, 2014. Employees arrived at the office, coffee in hand, ready to tackle the work week. But when they turned on their computers, what greeted them was not the usual login screen. Instead, their monitors displayed a horrifying message in bold, flashing text. Hacked by GOP. The Guardians of Peace. We have all your data. If you do not comply with our demands, we will release everything. Accompanying the ominous warning was a graphic of a grinning red skeleton and a countdown timer, ticking away like a digital doomsday clock. Confusion turned to panic as employees realized they couldn't access any files. Everything was locked. Calls to IT support only confirmed the worst. Sony's systems had been completely hijacked. The hackers, calling themselves the Guardians of Peace, made their demands clear. Sony must cancel the release of The Interview, a controversial comedy starring Seth Rogen and James Franco that mocked North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. If the company failed to comply, the group promised to unleash a tidal wave of stolen data. Still skeptical about the severity of the threat, Sony executives received a terrifying confirmation when the hackers released the first batch of stolen files. These included payroll documents, private emails, and sensitive company contracts. But what really made their blood run cold was the contents of the hackers' next threat. Among the stolen materials were unreleased films, detailed employee records, and personal information about the staff. For good measure, the hackers provided a grim visual of their capabilities. At one point, they allegedly opened a direct communication channel with Sony, showcasing a trove of internal documents as proof they had infiltrated the company weeks before. Sony realized this wasn't just about a movie. This was a calculated, multi-layered attack designed to cripple their operations and tarnish their reputation. Behind the scenes, chaos erupted. Executives scrambled to assess the scope of the breach, while employees, terrified their private information was now in the hands of hackers, began to fear for their safety. Adding to the tension, Sony's IT department was paralyzed, unable to shut down the attack or regain control of their systems. Yet, amidst the unfolding crisis, the attackers' calm and calculating approach was unnerving. They weren't rushing to wreak havoc. They were methodical, slowly leaking files and escalating their demands. Their confidence suggested they were well prepared and knew Sony's vulnerabilities inside and out. By the end of the day, the company's leaders were facing an unthinkable reality. They were in a digital hostage situation. The FBI was called in, but even with their involvement, the attackers remained steps ahead. The hackers' cold and calculated demeanor sent a chilling message not just to Sony but to the world. In the digital age, no one was untouchable. The fallout begins. As the leaks began to trickle out, the magnitude of the attack became terrifyingly clear. At first, it was just a few files, employee rosters, salary records, and innocuous internal memos. But soon, the hackers escalated their assault. Entire databases of sensitive information were dumped online for the world to see. Executives at Sony were blindsided. Embarrassing email exchanges between top-level decision-makers were exposed, sparking public outrage and internal tension. One particularly damaging thread revealed candid and unfiltered opinions about Hollywood stars, leading to strained relationships with major actors and directors. The leaks didn't just hit Sony as a corporation, they were personal, leaving employees and executives humiliated and vulnerable. For regular staff, the consequences were just as devastating. Hackers published personal addresses, phone numbers, and even social security numbers of thousands of employees. Health records containing private medical details were suddenly public knowledge. Many employees, fearing for their safety and identity security, began receiving ominous calls and threats from strangers who had accessed the leaked information. And then came the financial blow. Several unreleased films, including Annie and Fury, were pirated and spread across the internet within days. Sony lost millions in potential revenue before the films even had a chance to hit theaters. Beyond the money, the leaks undermined the trust of filmmakers and partners, who began to question whether their own projects could ever remain secure with Sony. Hollywood, typically a place of glamour and control, was in shock. The entertainment world had seen its fair share of scandals, but this was on another level. Industry professionals whispered about what might come next. worried they too could become collateral damage in this cyber war. Rival studios watched uneasily, knowing that if Sony could be breached, no one was truly safe. Inside Sony, the atmosphere was one of constant crisis. Staff meetings turned into damage control sessions where senior executives scrambled to figure out how to plug the leaks while keeping operations afloat. But with every passing day, it seemed like there was no end to the hackers' reach. Meanwhile, public perception began to shift. While many sympathized with Sony's plight, the leaks revealed behind-the-scenes politics that painted the company in an unflattering light. Criticism mounted over the way Sony conducted its business, from salary disparities to its handling of talent. It became clear that this wasn't just a data breach, it was a public relations disaster of epic proportions. As the fallout spread, Sony's focus turned to the interview, the film at the heart of the controversy. The hackers' demands became more aggressive: cancel the movie or face even more devastating consequences. This left Sony in an impossible position. Should they cave to the demands, sacrificing creative freedom and setting a dangerous precedent? Or should they risk further exposure and potential violence? The world watched as Sony's nightmare continued to unfold, wondering if the entertainment giant would ever recover from the attack that had shaken Hollywood to its core. The FBI steps in. Overwhelmed by the scale of the attack, Sony turned to the US government for help. The FBI quickly stepped in, launching one of the most high-profile cybercrime investigations in history. Their early findings were chilling. The attack was highly sophisticated, involving malware custom-designed to erase data and disrupt operations. This wasn't the work of ordinary hackers, it was a coordinated and professional operation. As the investigation progressed, North Korea emerged as the prime suspect. The FBI linked the malware to a North Korean hacking group known as Lazarus, notorious for previous cyber attacks on South Korean banks and media outlets. The timing of the attack, coupled with Pyongyang's public condemnation of the interview, further strengthened suspicions. North Korea, however, denied any involvement, calling the accusations a groundless slander. Yet the evidence pointed to a deeper story. The FBI revealed that the attack bore hallmarks of state-sponsored hacking, including tools and techniques similar to those seen in previous attacks linked to Pyongyang. It was a sobering reminder of how geopolitical tensions could spill into the digital realm. The hack marked a turning point in cybersecurity, with experts debating the implications of a foreign government targeting a private corporation over a film. The incident also raised questions about freedom of expression, corporate responsibility, and the growing threat of cyber warfare in a globally connected world. Sony's tough decision. Faced with escalating threats, including warnings of physical attacks on theaters showing the interview, Sony made the controversial decision to pull the film from its scheduled Christmas Day release. The move sparked a heated debate about freedom of expression and whether the hackers' demands had handed them a victory. Under pressure from critics and even then President Barack Obama, Sony eventually reversed course, releasing the film online and in select theaters. But by then, the damage was done. Aftermath and lingering questions. In the aftermath, Sony Pictures spent months rebuilding its systems and restoring trust. The hack cost the company an estimated $15 million in recovery efforts alone. Meanwhile, debates about cybersecurity and international cyber attacks reach new heights. To this day, questions linger about the attack. Was North Korea truly responsible, or was it a rogue group with its own agenda? And could Sony or any company ever be fully protected from a threat of this scale? The Sony Pictures hack served as a wake-up call for the world, exposing the vulnerabilities of even the largest organizations. It also set a chilling precedent for how digital warfare could be used to stifle creativity and expression. What do you think? Was this a targeted act of international aggression, or is there more to the story? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life mysteries.